Okay, so I just want to give you a 4-minute commercial who we are, because not everybody here is existing clients. Basically, Clients First Business Solutions. We are really about achieving business value and return on investment. Software is just a tool. Matter of fact, we don't just sell MAS90 and 200. We work with Sage, we work with Microsoft, and we work with SAP as well. And we do these multiple products because each product has its strengths and weaknesses. Different products are designed for different size companies, different transaction volumes, different budgets, and so forth. But it's really about understanding about your business, and really think of us as your outside CPA or consulting or lawyers in a positive light kind of firm. And again, you don't ask your accounting firm, do you use Lotus or Excel? You want to understand about their expertise and ability to help your business. And that's the way we hope you come to think of us. We are a national organization with 7 locations in the U.S. in those states. We have approximately 100 employees across the country. We do about $12 million a year in consolidated revenue. We have well over 600 clients. And again, we are generally distribution and manufacturing centric, although we have clients in every exotic industry from hedge funds to job costs to professional services and software. But, you know, probably 80% of our clients fall somewhere into the distribution manufacturing arena. Been in the VAR business, top 10 winner for the last 4 years. That's a magazine of all the value-added resellers out there. We win the Technology Pacesetter Award pretty much every year. We are a Sage board-level partner and Circle of Excellence winner, so we do have a lot of clout with Sage. If you have things you want to see in the product and you really are emphatic about it, we can get to some of the ears that some smaller resellers can't really get to. And our client satisfaction ratings are always in the top 10 percentile. And, you know, given the tough New York, New Jersey market, that's pretty good. For some reason, the ones in the Midwest are just always a little higher. They're hard, but it's a tough crowd. And we are privately owned, profitable, and we have no debt. So we're not some roll-up here of a VC-funded company that's just looking to, you know, use this as a financial springboard for some scenario. As I mentioned, we work with Sage MAS90, 200, 500, SAP Business One, and Microsoft Dynamics. In this particular office, we focus on what used to be known as Navision or NAV. Some of our other offices focus on GP or Great Plains or AX or Exapta. Now, that being said, let me kick things off. I just want to mention, if you go to our website, and that's the specific URL, you'll see it. You just go to our homepage. You'll see our blog, which covers all of the products and industry areas. I'm just going to click on it now because that should be a live link. So if you go to our clientsfirst-us.com website, you'll see over here under blog, it'll show you all of our blog articles. Happen to be the last one posted. It shows you newest to oldest. Happens to be regarding Dynamics Nav. But if you see on the left, we have it broken down into categories. And the category that you would be interested in would be to click on Sage. And then within Sage, you'll see the different products. And generally, you would then click on Sage, MAS90, and 200. And you can take this URL and bookmark it. And this will always take you directly to all the blogs that we put out about MAS90 and 200. This one's about a very specific error that was starting to pop up recently that you can understand what it's about. The next one is about this user group, and that's how you signed up. The next one is about FRX versus its replacement product called the Microsoft Management Reporter. The next one, this one I'll be talking about later, is here we are to talk about 4.4, and Sage recently announced 4.4.01. And we'll talk about what you're going to be able to get in there. And if you keep scrolling, we discussed this is a big issue for any of you that take credit cards, the new PCI DSS standards, which are basically an industry standard about credit cards. And if you aren't using compliant software, you could lose your ability to process credit cards. And technically, this starts June 1st. Whether everybody's going to, you know, come down on you on June 2nd versus give you months to really get your house in order, this is an important topic. And then if what you see isn't there, you can go to older entries, and then it just keeps going and going and going and talking about the things. So I would say it's 80% quality content and 20% marketing. I mean, you know, it is out there for search engines and so forth, but the majority of the posts are, you know, technical. And if you say, you know, error 47 line whatever, there's a good chance it'll be found in our blog. If you want to search for something in particular, you can go into the search box on top and just type it. There's also an option coming soon where you'll be able to subscribe to the blog so that just whenever we post something new, you get an email with a link. Because a lot of people, let's face it, you just forget to go back and check, and there could be 10 articles posted, and you only look at the last one or two. But there's a lot of meat in here. There's also a lot of video recordings linked. So, for example, this user group, I'm recording the audio and my screens right now, and we'll be then posting it up into the blog through our video hosting service, and you'll be able to, scan to the areas of interest. Maybe your colleagues who couldn't make it will be able to see it. We've done video recordings and demos of job ops and this and that, so look through it. It's very rich. We try to at least create a post or two per week at a minimum to keep it interesting, because, a lot of companies create a website and they think, latest news, June 2008, we've acquired XYZ company, and it's like becomes so stale, it's a problem. So that's the blog, and the other area is talking about, I want to talk about this specifically, the version 4.401 update, because most of today I want to go into what's in 4.4. And again, we have a blog post, and something's wrong with my links there, so I apologize. So I'll use our search to find it. Okay, so what 4.401 adds on top of everything we're going to talk about today, we're not going to demonstrate this, is it will give you enhanced searching and cash receipts entry. You can even find a customer's invoice based on a serial number of an item you sold to them. I'm sure there's a good use for that somewhere, and that is now built-in functionality. Just to give you a little history here, many of you may have been aware of the concept of Sage Extended Solutions. Everybody here know of or heard of those? That was a library of hundreds and hundreds of add-ins to MAS90 that Sage acquired when they bought a company called McCabe about 5 to 10 years ago. And Sage has finally decided they don't want to be in the custom add-on business. So what they've done is they've taken the top 50 or so that they feel are the most popular, and they are going to be slowly putting them into the base product and just giving them away. And then the remaining few hundred, they are open sourcing, so that if you have one of the ones that aren't on that 50 or so list, or you want to buy one, then a number of master developers, those are programmers authorized to modify MAS, can get them to the current level that you're in and support them. We work pretty exclusively with a company called DSD out of California for that service. We have a good relationship with them, and they have one of the best technical track records of all the master developers out there. So bottom line, what's coming, what they're throwing in, that used to be, each one of these used to be between $800 and $1,500 as an add-on for a specific customer, is this item. The next one is to be able to record wire transfer information when you do AP check processing. Now, this is not an ACH integration or anything like that, but historically there was never a clean way to put wire transfer info. You kind of fudged it with check numbers and so forth. They're also going to allow you, for those using payroll, to set up automatic earnings codes that default in by employee to save a lot of manual processing. Also, enhanced purchase controls and sales order entry. This is a very popular one. For example, we don't want certain customers to be able to buy certain products because those products are customized for a different customer. And right now in MAS, there's no physical way to prevent that. With these enhanced purchase controls, you'll be able to say, these 10 items can only be purchased by this customer. And when you try and pick items and select them, those rules will be enforced. There are a number of other features in there, but that's a pretty big little enhancement that's going in there. You'll be able to print back order information on picking sheets. Historically, the back order info doesn't print there. You'll now have that option. You'll be able to avoid printing duplicate picking sheets, which right now is pretty easy to occur based on the current design. New bin and lot searching in the, bin, I don't know. That's a typo because there is no bin capability. Well, yeah, you can search on the single bin, or lot searching and in the inventory module, so it'll be easier to find information. New credit card encryption that gets you 100% compliant with PCI DSS, which is that new credit card rule that goes into effect. And the ability, this is more for technicals, you can now search in the data display and maintenance, which is typically for our consultants, something that you shouldn't be doing anyway.
Credit card encryption, is that patch 18?
I'm sorry?
Is that patch 18?
I know what you're talking about in that. I think that's part of patch 18. This may take it to another level. I have to double check. By the way, this whole article then drills in. We belong to a group called 90 Minds, which is at 90minds.com. It's about 40 40 of the top resellers in the country have banded together, and we have our own blog in here as a group, which is also very useful. And that particular blog covers the details of this, including what's called an embedded script document. This is a way to post a PDF into a web page very easily, which you can download this and so forth. But one of the documents here does show you the screenshots of all the features I just talked about. One of our members created this because Sage didn't take the time to do it. So showing you in the cash receipts entry screen where you'll be able to, for example, do some of the new things here. How you can search for a cash receipt based on an invoice number, or how to record wire transfer information and how you have to turn it on and set it up before it just works, or find one of the other, the payroll and how to use that whole default earnings code. So again, it's out there. I'm not here to show you the blog. You guys can go do that on your own time, but just keep that in mind as well. So that's somewhat covering what is at a high level what's in this 4401 release, which is not a major upgrade. You don't need to come out for days. It's probably something that clients will be able to even self-install. It's like I said, Sage is going to be doing these minor point releases. Part of it is that pressure of why am I paying maintenance? It takes a year and a half, 2 years to get a major release. By putting these additional functionalities in the in-between periods, it gives fair value and an argument as to why are you paying maintenance, because they're continually putting new functionality into the system beyond the big releases. So let's talk about 4.4. Are anybody here running 4.4 yet? Okay, that's pretty expected. 4.4 started shipping, I think it was the very end of February, but most clients are typically and should be, skeptical of putting in, the first release, considering they are now up to Service Pack 18. Actually, there was 17, then 18, then they pulled 18 off the market because there was a major issue, and then they put it back on. Basically, if you were using credit cards and you put patch 18 on, you were unable to do business. Okay, so at this point, though, we can say, based on the experience of us and more importantly, our 90 Minds group that we belong to, which is 40 resellers, everybody's collaboratively saying she's ready, okay? Fully ready. Actually, it was a fairly good release even from the beginning. Most of those packs and so forth are all minor stuff. We've seen a lot uglier major releases, and this one, took a while. It sat in a very long beta, and it's, we pulled it out of the oven, I think, pretty close to ready versus some historical releases. So let's talk about it. Just to go back to some history, many of you may or may not be aware of this. MAS90 underwent a major technical overhaul in the last almost 10 years. So in 2001 is when Sage released version 3.7.1, and that was essentially the last release of the old architecture, which was basically a Windows scrape onto the original DOS product from the late 80s and the early 1990s. And they kept cleaning it up and releasing it and doing this and that, but as they say, you can only put lipstick on a pig so long before the underpinnings of the technology, the flexibility, and the competitiveness of the product were being challenged by around 2001. I mean, if you remember in those old versions, and for those of you still running it, the windows, are a fixed size, and they looked great on that 14-inch tube you used to have, and now when you got your 26-inch wide panel, it's this teeny little window, and you're like, what gives? Excel goes out to here, but my mass screen is still tiny, and that's because it was all hard-coded, and it was, again, based on scraping a Windows graphic interface on top of the old fixed DOS screens. So around 2002, 2003, and 2000, when the development started, they went back to the drawing board and re-architected the technical underpinnings of MAS. We call that the business framework. And the first release of that was 4.0. And in order for, they essentially had to do it in pieces. So they had to build the underlying architecture and then roll it out into modules over time. Personally, I think it took a little longer than I'd like, but we're almost complete right now, and I'll explain that in a moment. So 4.0 was the first to release the new underlying technology, but the only module that was affected was the general ledger. Also, being the first release of the new technology, 4.0 was a fairly buggy release, had a lot of issues. They later came out not too long after with a 4.05, which fixed a lot of the technical issues. 4.1, which took almost 2.5 years later, was a big one, because in 4.1, that's where they brought sales order and AR and I think bank rec, if memory serves, into this new framework. And let's face it, they wanted to do the most important modules first, because that's how you sell new deals and so forth. And most of our businesses, in many cases, are most dependent on order processing and the operational side. So to take advantage of the new technology, they got it in the sales order, which was also one of the most disruptive releases, because as modules moved into this framework, it meant any forms you had customized via Crystal for your printing of your invoices and your purchase orders or whatever, and any reports you customize, if you created or had your consultant create any Crystal reports, most of the time were useless. You basically had to recreate them, because the way data was stored in the new architecture is much cleaner and better, but different than the old version, which meant all of the way your links were built in your old reports pretty much were out the window. And that's why these upgrades have tended to take 3 to 5 to 8 days versus the old you're in and out in an afternoon kind of upgrades that you were used to in the 3.x years. Then 4.2 came out, which is basically when they brought accounts payable into the new architecture. 4.3 came out. They took a break from moving modules in the architecture, but a big thing about 4.3 is when they added the paperless office suite into the system. Paperless Office was also a module that they had gotten with the acquisition of McCabe, and up until the release of 4.3, depending on which pieces you bought, could cost as much as $8,000 to $9,000 as an add-in, and it was a great add-in. Paperless Office, for those of you that aren't on 4.3 or have it and never implemented it, which I'm finding a lot of clients that aren't, our clients have never really got to, does two major things. First of all, it eliminates chopping trees down to print registers and put them in books. You do not have to print registers with Paperless Office. With Paperless Office, the registers get printed to PDFs that are archived into a directory that are fully searchable. They're more secure than paper, because paper can burn. Those directories can get backed up either locally and or off-site. And it introduces electronic document delivery. So let's say, 60% of your customers want that paper invoice. 10% want a fax, and the remaining just want the invoice by email or by print email and then followed up with a printed copy. You can now automate by customer, by vendor, what their preference for delivery is, and the system, as it generates those documents, invoices, sales order confirmations, or what have you, will automatically PDF them, attach them to an email, put a customized cover letter in the body of the email, and send them off to one or multiple contacts at your customers or what have you. That's all part of Paperless Office. And as I said, if you bought the whole enchilada before version 4.3, it was somewhere in the $8,000 to $9,000 range, and Sage put that into the base product for free now with version 4.3 on up. Then 4.4 is what they call the completion of the framework, and that's what we're going to talk about today. They've moved purchase order and inventory and bill of materials into this business framework. And, there's still a huge question mark about what does that mean for job cost, payroll, and MRP, because those are the three modules that are not, actually I think work order also, that are not in the framework. Now those products still work, those modules are available, they're for sale, but if Sage considers it complete, we're still scratching our heads as to where do they position that technology and what they're going to do with it. Right now it's still a question mark. Some of the other major capabilities of 4.4 is what's called parallel migration. In the past, in the last few versions, upgrading it was a pretty painful process because you couldn't upgrade over your existing installation. You had to basically create a new installation and pull your data over and redo a whole bunch of stuff. The new version is designed in a way where you have less downtime during the upgrade process. Still can fully test it and so forth, but it's a simpler, streamlined upgrade that makes it easier and for us, which means less costly for you. Okay, customer number expansion. We all know there are a couple of issues with MAS90 being a product that, again, was essentially designed in the late 80s with the concept of disk space being expensive. That 5 megabyte hard drive was $2,000, $3,000 when the product was invented. So everything had to be built with the concept of archiving or deleting data and minimizing space and this and that. And a lot of that heritage still followed the product as technology moved forward. One of the complaints of the years is your customer number is limited to 7 characters. And you may be on a cheaper product like BusinessWorks, which had 15 character customer numbers, and we were like, go ahead and upgrade to this product, but you lose that capability. Was a hard argument. So some of the key things have been expanded, including the ability now to have a 20 character customer number and a 20 character item number. That expansion has occurred in this version. We'll get into that in a little while. Obviously, then somebody's going to say, well, what about the invoice number? Because I got one client screaming over that. What about the vendor number? My guess is that's what's in the plans for 4.5, 4.6. Doing this seems like, oh, yeah, we'll just say instead of 7, make it 20. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to do these changes because those numbers and codes are used in thousands of places in the system, in reading logic and parsing out the information. Every form that was assuming that a customer number was 7 characters now has to somehow be fit so that it could be up to 20. So it is a massive undertaking to expand these. Over the years, I've had clients say, well, it should be about $500 to modify that so that it was 20. You have no idea. There's probably, thousands of man hours to do each of these expansions because of all of the touch points that those have and all of the interrelated components in the system. That was sort of the problem when the chart of accounts used to be limited to 9 digits and is now 32 characters. That was, again, major because of all the interrelationships and the reports and every module that's affected. There have been some usability improvements we'll get into, some major customizer enhancements. This is the hidden back door. I think this is probably the single most important improvement in this release that most people aren't aware or would think about as an end user, and new web services, which just I'll talk to at a high level. There are now capabilities for developers to directly push in customer and order information via high-level web APIs, which in English means it's a much easier system to create an e-commerce site integration to now than historically where you had to import everything through Visual Integrator, which worked, but it wasn't that real-time kind of technology that modern systems are built on. Right now, they're focused on the one that everybody wants most, customers and orders, but then they're going to be expanding that out to purchase orders and so forth in future releases. But this is the direction to keep the product current and modern. So let's talk about the business framework and some of the things that you get in it. Again, the products or modules that have moved to business framework in this major release are inventory, purchase order, and bill of materials. The first thing that you get, which how many of you are on 4.1 or higher here? So the majority of you are on it. So you're probably familiar with the grids and the sales order entry and how you put data in. All of those capabilities now come to purchase order entry, to bill of materials transactions, to inventory transactions, etc. The dual grids where you have the data, and then a second grid where you can drag fields up and down to. The batch manager, being able to do inventory transactions in separate batches has been asked for decades. That is now available in the system. All of the new capabilities of Customizer that came with the business framework, the unlimited user-definable fields on almost every table. I mean, here's the big one. I need extra fields on my lot number so I can track expiration date. That you could never do because a lot number was a lot number. Now you can add unlimited fields to a lot number and use that for reporting and tracking and so forth. So these technology improvements have a big impact on the kinds of ways we can make the product fit your business requirements better. Hyperlinks, you click on a customer address and it opens up their website. Crystal reports and forms. Now all of the built-in standard reports are built in Crystal in these modules like the other modules that you have, which make them far easier to customize for you or for us versus having to rewrite them from scratch, and they run much faster. Like the other modules, you now get user and date timestamps. Who created the purchase order and when? Who modified it and when? That is now going to be in purchase order like it is in sales order, which some customers still don't know that occurs because you have to hit a special key to see that info, but it's in there. Right-click menus. Now, right-click means something in a purchase order like it does in sales order, showing you all the context-sensitive things that you can do in there. Reports informed and saved settings, all those abilities to have your preferences when you run a report saved by user. Again, hopefully you're taking advantage of that feature and technology in the modules that you have. If not, we'll be happy to teach you more about using those. Here's this one little thing. They hit it in 4.3. It's probably the most popular little enhancement. Keep window open after print or preview. How many times did you hate in the old version? You print the report and then you want to print it again. It goes back to the menu. Got to reopen the report, reselect what you want, then preview. Then it closes the window. And so this now allows you every time after a print is done by preference by user to then just go back to the report setup screen without having to relaunch it off the menu each time if you wanted to run the report for different areas or regions or what have you. And you can choose that where after it prints it closes, but after it previews it doesn't, or vice versa, or both. That came in 4.3, and you'll see that capability now in all of these modules report runs as well. setup wizards. The system takes you through when you first set up these modules, wizard-based steps versus having to be more of a consultant and know every little nook and cranny and every odd order to set things up so that they work correctly. Purchase order and inventory now get the same feature that sales order and AR got, where in the past you had that period to date number, and my gosh, if you never closed your month on time, it all got bucketed up into the wrong numbers and nobody trusted the period to date number. And when the next period occurred, you lost the details of that period without going to a separate detail report. Well, when they move to business framework modules, yes, you have a period to date number, but you can look at any period and year and see the specific numbers for that period, and you don't have to worry about closing within 1 month of the prior month and screwing up all of your statistics. So you get enhanced security flexibility, the ability to set those rules like you have the credit limit or override. You don't have to run in and type a little password each time that everybody eventually knows after 15 minutes. So you get those security kind of capabilities in these modules as well. Again, the ability to say a person can create records or they can get to the customer maintenance but can only view it and so forth. And then the business object interface, which is that hidden power in this framework that 99% of end users don't realize, is every function and feature in MAS90 when it's in the business framework can be developed by an outside programmer in a way that doesn't touch the source code and can do some pretty amazing stuff via integrations, automations, and so forth. For example, in the old days when you used Visual Integrator to bring data into the system, the rules of that data were in Visual Integrator and were hard-coded by a programmer independently of the rules of the way you would type it in on the screen. And sometimes they wouldn't be right or perfect, and it was easy to import data that was not good or healthy. Now, Visual Integrator uses the object interface and will now do so in these modules so that any data that comes into the system from an external source has to go through exactly the same rules as if it was keyed in because it goes through the same code. This means any programmer wanting to interface to MAS with a specialty application can create their own version of a general journal entry screen, for argument's sake, and it would work and interact the same way as the built-in functionality. So if you've got an Access programmer or VB programmer that needs to do something, this is what they're looking for to do a proper modern integration. The other thing that you get is when you combine this with the new customizer scripting that we'll talk about later, it creates a level of customizability that a consultant or power end user can do that was unheard of, and it's probably still unheard of in 90% of the competitive apps that require you to do source code modifications. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at some of these. I'm just going to flip over to version 4.4 that I'm running here. Let's just look at some of those screens. So if we go into purchase order now in 4.4, we go into main, and we go into purchase order entry, it's going to look a lot more like the sales order entry you're familiar with if you're on version 4.1 or higher. You have the ability to bring up your existing orders, pull in an order, and you'll notice most importantly when you get to the lines, you now have that new ability to type and enter data right in the grid. Because this is business framework, for those of you that are familiar, for example, if I want the description showing, you can just drag it up, put it on the form. Now you see the description. Of course, there was no ability in the prior versions to modify the grids or the screens the way you entered your data. You can pull fields off. We don't do back orders in purchase order very often. Let's bring it down to the secondary grid. You have the two views. You have the vertical orientation and you have the horizontal orientation, which shows you more rows of information depending on, and notice I can resize these windows. As you click on a row, then you see all the extra fields that are not being displayed on the main grid that you might use occasionally, such as the GL account. Maybe you really always want to know the GL account, just drag it up. Now the GL account is part of the main grid. I generally prefer the vertical, but it just gives you an idea. So all of that stuff is part of the business framework. You also get a lot more icons, which sometimes are obvious. Sometimes you got to hover over them. So if you want to know, the alias item numbers for the existing item numbers, that search is there. It's just in a different icon. This button is an inventory quantity inquiry, which I don't think was very easy to get to in 4.3. If you click on it, for the row you're on, it jumps you right to the inventory inquiry by warehouse quantities. That's a nice little enhancement. Because it has a drop-down arrow, there are other lookups available here. What's our reorder data? And it will jump right into the inventory reorder data screen, which may also look new to you because inventory is now in business framework and thus is new and has the new capabilities. This is the quantity it recommends you reorder based on your standard reorder points, and you can just say that and it'll actually drop that quantity into the row that you're in. Item status, item memos, or it'll bring you directly into the item maintenance screen if you have the rights to, and we'll get into inventory maintenance in a moment, but this is what the new inventory maintenance screen looks like. See some of the other key points. And of course, you have these icons here. You can insert a row anywhere you want, delete the row. You can move the row down and reorder them, or move the row up, or you can just reset it the way it was. And because it's in Business Framework, none of this data is recorded to the system until you hit accept. So if you really screwed this up, you can just say cancel, are you sure? And it goes back the way it was before you brought it up. In the older version architecture, once you came off the row, that data was saved and you had there's really no undos to speak of. Some of the other Business Framework features that you get now, of course, all the date fields have the nice cool date picker. These links, here's their ship to address, click on it and it opens up the direct ship to maintenance right from that field. Where there are webs capabilities, for example, if you go to address, actually they don't have it here surprisingly, but if we go to the vendor, it should be in there. So if you click on here, I don't know if this is actually a valid address or not, we'll find out. So no, it's not, I guess it's play data, but if that was a real address, you'd get your map and so forth of it. Some of the other capabilities because of Business Framework are the ability to right-click here. Anytime you see a grid anywhere in the system, you can say export to Excel. I mean, this is kind of meaningless because it's one row, but if this was a big grid showing something, it would automatically push that grid out to Excel. There's other right mouse functionality here. Won't get into everything. It does say what is related to this. Well, we think a purchase order report is related, or this, and if you click on this, we'll go ahead and run a receipt history report for the item in question. And there's also context-sensitive help everywhere. So if you're on a particular field, or it should be context-sensitive, and you hit F1 for help, you'll get help about that specific field that you're on. And again, the newer updated help system is very deep. You know, some people say, where's the manuals? There are no more manuals. They haven't been as these modules have come in. But if you look at the online help, there's more than there was ever in the manuals, as well as, of course, there are still the module PDFs that are PDF files of module information. But again, it's all overview. The hardcore detailed documents are all in the help. And you can print any of those at any time if you still want the hard copy. So, one other thing is now you get the advanced memo maintenance that you got in sales order. Again, not all of you may even be familiar with that depending on your use of the system. But if I'm on this purchase, well, first of all, let me jump to this vendor. If I go to this vendor, you have the memo icon, which you've always had in MAS for years. I can go in this memo and say test. This is my test. Okay, you can have a memo date. You can have an expiration date. And you can say on the reminder date or always pop up. So, you know, whenever you order from this vendor, confirm with Steve that it's okay because of their whatever kind of pop-up note. You can put an expiration date, so only pop this note up after the 27th, a reminder date, and you can always attach any document. So if you go to your documents and I go to my products file and I go to, say, MAS90 and, I don't know, an example spreadsheet here, you can go ahead and tie that as well. So that now, notice the memo icon is yellow. And by the way, what I'm showing you here applies pretty much once you get to 4.4 to virtually every module in the system with the exception of work order, MRP, payroll, and job cost, because those aren't in the business framework. So once I click on this, you can see all of your memos. You double click on the memo, you can see the details. You can write War and Peace here in the actual memo. And of course, you can click here and view the attachments that are associated. Now, it's prettier, it's more powerful, it's better than the old memo engine, but still not radically different so far. By the way, under settings is where you can choose which screens you want these memos to pop up on. So you can say, you know, I don't want to be bothered with these pop-ups unless I'm doing a purchase order entry. Everything else, I don't want any. So you can check off the ones that you do or you don't want it to pop up or not on by functional screen. And that's a big capability from the older version. But what's really powerful is if we go back to the purchase order, now we can do memos that are document specific, not vendor specific, or sales order specific, but not customer specific. And again, I'm finding a lot of users that weren't fully trained as the new versions came in don't realize that and what that means. So I can create a memo specific to this purchase order called receiving, or whatever it is, problems. The items on this PO have come in below tolerance. Please double check test results before putting away. But what's kind of neat here, and you got all that stuff, is you can attach something. So you could, for example, attach the receiving document, the bill of lading, the MSDS or certificate of compliance or whatever paperwork that's associated with this. And again, I'll just go into one of my directories here, go into my MAS, pick any old document as an example and say accept. So what this means is whenever you go into this purchase order and you can generate reports off of this, you open it up, you see there's a memo, and you can see the associated document that's associated with that. So this specifically relates to that purchase order. So basically what you got here is a poor man's document management system. Yes, there are $20,000 add-ons for MAS for heavy-duty document management, but for a lot of people, this is pretty darn good. Really, the only thing you got to be concerned about is when you do your attachment, notice the path here. Okay, it's relative to your workstation, so you're going to want to keep your important documents on some network share where it's the M drive for everybody, or the / server / kind of universal name. Because if I do this attachment and then you open it up on your machine and it's on my C drive, you're not going to see it. This data is a link, not a copy. But if you set up your storage in a way with your IT folks that everybody's storing everything consistently, this does create a poor man's document management system. Here's an example. You get an AP invoice. You get the original invoice. You scan it in with the Acrobat. You attach it to the invoice, and that comes into your branch office now. HQ can see a copy of the invoice. So anybody find that interesting or helpful that you may not have been aware of? All right, so that's a high-level overview of some of the stuff. Again, some of this might be old hat if you've really been using the business framework in the other modules, but everything I've just showed you now relates to purchase order, bill of materials, and inventory. Let's, now that I've gone through the grid stuff, let's take a quick look at the, all right, so we'll go to inventory management, main, just showing you the new item maintenance screen. Just go to one of our items here. Looks pretty much, it shows mostly the same information, but has all that new functionality, the calculators, the calendars, things like that. Wherever there's a numeric field, just like always, you now have the built-in calculator, the links, the tabs. Notice now in the history in the past, well, let me go back to the main screen. There should be where it shows the month to date. I'm trying to think where that would be. Well, it doesn't apply. But anyway, you've got the quantities that show you by warehouse. The nice thing here is if you double-click the warehouse, it'll now drill into that quantity recap that shows you exactly, which modules it's committed from, etc. This is showing you all the one warehouse you drilled in on. If you say all, it rolls the numbers up for all the warehouses combined. You also have these related icons here. This will say, go ahead and recommend what are you know how you used to have to go to that warehouse screen and set up your reorder levels? You can now set those all up for a given item by warehouse in a nice little grid. It's still manual. You have to know your reorder points, but it's much cleaner to do the data entry than it was in the old versions. So you can literally move around with the arrow keys like Excel and bang in your reorder points. So that's a nice improvement. And again, you have your history screens, quantities, sales view of history, receipts, compare prior year versus comparing current months. You can drill down into customer level data. So for this customer, for this item, this is the sales. Again, much of this was in the old version, but they really cleaned up the presentation of it and the use of it. And again, as we mentioned before, because this is modern, you can now see more data at the same time and take advantage of those big monitors that you're all getting. Again, transaction details by warehouse with drill down where appropriate. The sample data is terrible, so I'm missing a lot of drill down info. Open purchase orders, open sales orders, and the cost detail screen for FIFO and lot numbered items. So, any questions on that? I know I'm going kind of quick. I just want to keep pace with the clock here, but give you an idea of that. And then the other place, if you look at bill of materials, how many here, show of hand, use the bill of materials module? I'd say about half of you. So if we go into a bill of materials maintenance, for example, this is going to look really different. Whoops, I got to switch companies here. So this is the header, and now this is the lines of where you set up a bill, and that's not a good-looking bill. So this shows you at the the top level where you set up your components and so forth. Again, you have the dual grids, just as you would expect in the other modules. But what's really, and again, a lot of the stuff is hidden. If it had interactions or options, those would be available from here. But what's really nice is if you look at the bill of materials inquiry now, let me find the computer. And then you say which revision level, because we've always had revision tracking. Okay, which options, this particular sample bill, you have to at least specify a hard drive. Don't laugh about the sample data. Okay, and then optionally I can pick an auxiliary, 3.5-inch floppy or whatever. Okay, so now do I want it indented? Now you have a way to view the indented bill with collapsible and expandable views. You can hit this one button here to expand all, collapse the entire tree. I can just look at the options of the 80 megabyte. So if the customer chose the 80 megabyte hard drive assembly, I guess we've given them a free upgrade, because now as the sample data went through updates, we give them a 720 meg drive. They were just too lazy to rename the header item. A ribbon cable, a controller. So these are the 4 items that make up that option. So you can very easily see this. Here's an option interaction. Because we had that drive, multiple drives, we have to remove the controller that's designed to handle only one drive. So all of that becomes very obvious. And then here is the base items. We need a cabinet, a motherboard, memory, a monitor, and a keyboard. And then if we look at the cabinet's made up of a cover, a chassis, and a power supply. And the power supply is made up of the power supply, a power cord, and a switch. And the switch is made up of a switch, a gasket, a screw. You get the idea. But the point is, it's a much improved way to understand and visualize your bill of materials than the old version. You can look at it in a summary, which rolls all the quantities up into a single level, and you can look at it as a single level without blowing through any of the phantom components. And you can show all items, only you can exclude comments, show comments. You can also now have miscellaneous charge codes in there. So a lot of improvements to the module. And again, of course, your transaction entry screens are all going to be grid-based, but I don't want to beat it just for the sake of time here. Any questions about any of that so far? Just talk, I'm not going to get into it, talk about the parallel migration. So basically, we can go from 3.7.1 to directly to version 4.4 with this. A lot of companies do not spend the R&D. A lot of companies don't spend the R&D to make the consultant's life easier. They do it to make things that look great in a demo, but the underlying plumbing makes a product very hard to support and ends up costing you money, because the tools like renumber or delete or import are either buggy or non-existent. And this is one of the reasons why MAS generally keeps a relatively low total cost of ownership, is Sage has invested a fair amount in the tools that make our lives easier, which makes your lives easier and less expensive. So we can take from 3.7.1 direct to 4.4. There are a lot of systems where you got to do 8 upgrades, one after the next, things like that. The time constraints are out. We can basically we take you out of your system for maybe a half hour to an hour. We do our thing while you continue working, and then we roll in the new changes. Your overall downtime during our upgrades only a couple hours. That's very rare for a lot of systems. Customer will be able to continue during your upgrade. Basically, then we remigrate your current data, and we can do this all on the same server. We don't have to isolate it to a separate box, because they two couldn't coexist. Again, with the new architecture, you can have multiple instances running in the same box. Again, just makes IT's life, our life, and thus your total bill more attractive to do the upgrades. And again, just talking about the customer expansion, so customer numbers go from 7 to 20. The divisions still remain 2. It's implemented through the accounts receivable options screen, and you can choose this by company. Now, this is important. If you were to buy, MAS90 today and you buy a brand new copy, by default, you have 20 character customer numbers. If you're on MAS90 today and you don't do anything, your customer numbers will stay at 7 even after the upgrade, unless we go into the setup screen and expand it. Once you expand it, there's no going back, and there's two big, caution, don't drink your coffee because it's hot type warnings in your face, because there's no undo short of restoring from a backup. But once you do to 20, you're now dealing with 20 character numbers, and that choice can be made by company. That means any custom reports that you wrote based on customer numbers will continue to work, but if you didn't leave enough real estate on the report for a 20 character customer number, somebody has to go in and adjust everything to fit.
Mark, do they extend the name field also, or just the number?
No, unfortunately, just the number. Oh, and I thought I was wrong before. I went to 30. Item codes can now be 30 characters long, just like aliases have been for 15 years, okay, which is a major improvement for a lot of people trying to squeeze every piece of knowledge about their product into an item number. Now, I'm not a big fan of that philosophy, but I know companies do that where just by looking at the item number, they know everything about a complicated item, and 15 characters just doesn't cut it. And this will now greatly be more flexible. And again, it's done when you first install, set up a new company, or set up a new copy of MAS90, it'll be 30. If you're on 15 today, it'll stay 15, unless we specifically go in and expand it after reading all the warnings that say you can't undo it. All right, so if we go for the customer number, and we go to, I think it's in Setup. Here, allow entry of expanded customer numbers. So if I click on that, here's warning number 1, okay? Do not jump off the elevator while in pause. Some lawyer kind of stuff here. Basically, they're warning you, this means this will expand. All the built-in forms will be modified to automatically handle this. They've dealt with all of that. But any custom, oh, by the way, here's a big if. If you do this, you can't use the old text forms in job cost or work order, because Sage's like, all right, give it up. All right, you're either going to go, there's only so long they can support the old DOS type forms, so those forms will not work. And then if you're really sure, well, first of all, you click here and it tells you more about it, and it opens up the help on this whole subject area, okay? And then if you say yes, I'm not going to do it, then there's one more warning. Are you absolutely positively sure you want to do this? You say yes, it does it, and you're done, okay? Now, this took me a minute to find out. You would think if you went to item setup and inventory, it would be the same place, but in the infinite wisdom of different groups of programmers, they took a different approach. To do the expansion on items, it's not in inventory. It's in this area called common information. And that's where a lot of the stuff that's common across modules is managed. So if we go into common information options, okay, this is where it is. This took me 15 minutes to find, so I'll save you the effort. Allow, again, you get the same, are you absolutely positively sure warning. Some global enhancements. You ever get it where you preview your crystal report and you're like, that's too small, I need it 100%. And every time you preview it, you got to keep setting it to whatever your percentage is. Now, whatever you set it to, it'll remember by user the last time, so you don't have to constantly do that. These are these little annoying things that you're like, okay, thank you. You can view the alias items are now available everywhere in the system. Before you could see them in sales order, not purchase order, this or that. It's been all cleaned up. It's all on data entry and inquiry screens everywhere. So aliases are fully supported. We also have a new business desktop I'll show you in a moment. Now here's the one. You can now increase your quantity decimals out to, I think, 4 or 6 places. But the insanity is you can't enter it anywhere. Okay, so in the database, they've made the room. They're really getting ready to do this, and they probably shouldn't have even put it in there but I guess they ran out of time. So you go into item setups, and you can't put in those extra digits, so you can't use them, so don't get excited. But it's obviously coming because the database is expanded and the option is there. Knowing it's coming is helpful because that is a painful area. For any of my clients that are in the food industry and you're making a product and there's a tiny little bit of MSG or this or that, those fraction issues get to be a major pain in the you-know-what when you're trying to do bills of materials to make batches of food products or what have you. And then they've done this new business desktop, which is a new look and feel, and it's a more meaningful web page relative to MAS. It highlights, first of all, a lot of people aren't even aware of these features, and hopefully this will make it more popular because it's in your user's face versus being a MAS90 junkie to know about this stuff. The Sage community forums, which are open to the public and to users, where you can talk and ask questions and collaborate with other MAS users. It also discusses, they've actually changed systems to another one, but it works the same. The feedback, what feature is it you want to see in the system? You can now put in your suggestion or look at the other people's suggestions and vote them up, like sort of like Dig if you ever use those sites. And since Sage will theoretically look at the number of votes up and use that in balancing their decisions for future enhancements. So people are always like, why doesn't somebody tell them I need this? Well, now every end user with MAS90 can go in and vote up or down or add their own enhancement suggestions, and hopefully that'll drive a better product. So let's just take a quick look at that. So if we go to the MAS desktop, let me just collapse everything to keep it clean. So if you click here and you go to your Sage MAS community forums, the first time you go in, you do have to register like any forum system. Okay, so you can see it all here. You can look around it. There's a blog, there's tips, there's tricks. If I want to go into the MAS90 discussion forum, you say join the discussion. And then here are the latest posts, announcements, whatever it is, core, and then they break it into core, distribution, CRM, personalization, technical, whatever it is. So if I go to distribution, okay, then these are the most recent topics, and you should all be fairly familiar with how forums work on the internet. So MRP won't run from menu. So somebody said a client upgraded from this and now it won't run. If they generate any inputs appreciated, when you say it won't run, our experience is to run as long as there's no buyer planner. Buyer planner has also corrected with less if you're yours. We did that. It still doesn't work if you try doing this. The initial message was this. Now all this is free, and this could be either consultants like me trolling the boards and helping. Sometimes Sage employees do. It's not official. You're not getting warranty that this is help desk, but often you get better answers here than you do when you call the help desk. So it's pretty interesting. Or you may have a question like, does anybody here deal with consignment inventory? And if so, how have you approached that issue with the functionality of MAS or whatever? So this is now out there, and it's in your face because it's on everybody's desktop. And I think as people move to this version, we're going to see a lot more volume increase on that site. And the more people that use it, the more valuable it is. And then there's their newsletter. Now here's the important one. Tell us what you think. If you click on this, this goes to this tool, and it usually just shows the latest, but you can look at it. So here's the the top one. Increase the length of the AP invoice number. 63 people voted for it. If you think that's a good idea, click vote for. Okay, the first, you do have to log in. I think I'm logged in with my... Now, okay, so I voted for it. Allow multiple bin locations. I think I already voted for that one. Now 52 people. So these are the top ones so far, and you can scan through them and say, yep, I want that. Don't vote for everything, or it sort of defeats the purpose, because they're not going to do everything, let's face it. You can also see here, there are 8 one of these that people voted for that they plan on adding. The ability to hide or inactivate items and not have them still show up on your list. That's coming. Electronic bank reconciliation integration. Positive pay integration without third party. Make bank rec easier to use. Yep, they went and rewrote the module and it's still as difficult as ever. That's going to get redone. Support SQL Server. That's coming in about a year. FRX alternative. That's coming because FRX is being discontinued. PCI credit. So these are the things that they actually have planned in the works, ACH. And then here's the ones that are actually done, and that is support Windows 7, because when the product first came out in 4.4, it wasn't actually ready for Windows 7. So I think you can go through this, and if there's one you don't see, you can type it in here, have it make my coffee in the morning, whatever it is, and see how many people, like the idea and voted up. So that's all from the Information Center.
Can that be customized? Is that just an HTML page that's on each client's desk?
Yeah, all that really is technically, if you look at it, is this file. If you change welcome.html in that MAS90 directory, you can add your own link to the Siemens corporate blog or whatever you want. But that is, what I'm really surprised about, I don't understand is why that, maybe they didn't want to assume everybody has web connectivity, why they didn't make it so it checks for Sage's page, and then if it's not there, do this. Because what if Sage wanted to add something new? There's no way that I'm aware of other than a later release for this page to ever change. Like this said, good thing they didn't say IdeaScope here because they started with that service and they switched to this other one after about 3 months. I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe it was...
A lot of our, since they're on the shop floor, a lot of our PCs don't have internet access.
Okay, then, but at least they should try, and then if it comes back with a, then fall back to the default. But either way, you can modify this page. We technically could logo it up with clients first, but I think that's cheesy, so you know who we are. Okay, some other information, miscellaneous, allow years to retain. They relocated the number of decimal places, all this into that common information area. Miscellaneous charge maintenance has been moved from PO and bill of material into common. Some other stuff. Don't want to, I just got to keep an eye on the time here. Standard cost adjustment, register, and update. This is new. If any of you work with standard costs, how many of you use standard costing? If you want to change standard costs, you got to go to each item and change it manually. Now, if any of you have ever worked with the price change feature in MAS over the years, there's now a new function like that to MAS change costs. Take standard costs for this product line and add 5%, $10, whatever it is. There's a MAS update functionality for managing standard costs. And before it goes ahead and does it, it lets you print a preview before it commits it, so you can sort of build it out in a spreadsheet. Also, these reports, because of the nature of the beast, are now available both in landscape and portrait. Some of them people like portrait because you can see more on a page, but you need a microscope to read all the data. Others like landscape because it's easier to read, but you get less. So these very important reports that show a lot are now, they give you an option. The forms are set up to work in both portrait and landscape. And a new feature, and I never really realized this, but standard cost items can now be $0. I'm sure there's a scenario where that's helpful, and that wasn't available before. And again, I'm not going to get into this. What I just described is this ability to MAS change or remove or edit standard cost for all of your items very easily. You also, like the other MAS changes, you can schedule it to do it at midnight because you can't, certain things like that would never work when everybody's in the system changing the costs. And then it tells you with a log what happened. And this just shows you a screenshot of what that function looks like. You can change it by percentage, by dollar amount, a range of items, a range of product lines, or primary only for one vendor. And again, then it tells you if you proceed, this is what the new numbers would be, similar to other aspects of the system. Okay, some of this I already talked about. They've streamlined the cost allocation function in purchase orders. Drop shipments are a little bit better now in purchase orders. The receipt history is included. In the past, when you had a drop ship, it was never shown in the purchase order receipt because it never came through inventory. Now it does. So if you have a customer on 5 separate orders that comes from one vendor, it will automatically, with the automatic build a single purchase order for that. And as I mentioned, we went through bill of materials inquiry. It's more relevant, the drill down and around. Picking sheets are now available, so if you said, I want to build this set of bills, it'll create a picking sheet similar to what work order has. Because a lot of people bought bill of materials and work order, but never implemented work order because it's so painful. But bill was good enough for a basic manufacturer, so they're adding a little bit more functionality into the bill of materials because half of you have bill, but I bet, how many of you have work order? 4. How many of you still use work order? Still using it, okay. Over the years, for every 2 work orders we sold, 1 actually got implemented because of, oh my God, look at all this data entry we got to do to keep this thing breathing. So I kind of got ahead of myself in that we demoed all of that already. Okay. Next new item in 4.4, Business Insights Explorer. Okay, Business Insights Explorer has 28 views now in 4.4. How many of you are familiar with Business Insights Explorer? About 25% of you. This actually came out in version 4.1, I think, initially, and it was limited to like 7 views. And each new version, they keep throwing more and more and more, and now they're up to 28 views, which include views for the newly updated modules. There's views for inventory item quantities by warehouse, vendor purchase history, bill of materials, and a nice where used view. So let's take a quick look at that. If I go into MAS, for those of you not familiar with it, in the, just clean these all up. Under Business Insights, you have the Business Insights dashboard. which I'm not sure if everybody's aware of. I'll just show you quickly. They have updated this dashboard, I think, in version 4.3. Oh, I'm in the wrong company, excuse me. I'll just refresh the data. You can have these refreshes automatic. So the new dashboard, if you haven't looked, these are user definable, which users can see what are these pieces and so forth. But this is built-in dashboard showing you payables, cash requirements, purchases by division, top vendors, and each one of these are drillable. So if you click on it, it'll open up any vendor screen, so you can drill back to a lot of the information that you see there. Accounts receivable, cash expectations, cash flow. Let me just make this a little wider so you can see more. Receivables, sales by division, top customers, period to date, year to date. It's a nice snapshot for senior management. Balance sheet details. Again, you can turn on and off each of these segments by user or by group. So obviously not everybody's going to see the P&L information. Balance sheet summary, budget comparisons, net receivables. Again, you click on it. It'll refresh that automatically or build a report that relates to this, which is what it's doing now. So there's a budget report because I clicked on a budget item. Budget versus actuals, income statement details, leverage ratios, operational efficiency, profitability, sales by product line, top selling items, workforce statistics, which comes from payroll. So pretty much all the modules are covered in these, pretty nicely done. This is out of the box. You don't need any special servers or anything else. The dashboards have been there for like a decade, but they really did redo them in 4.2 or 4.3, and they're pretty rich now, and the numbers tie out much better than they used to. So if you haven't looked at these before, I definitely recommend you go into Business Insights and Dashboard, and if people like it, remember any item you like, you can always drag it onto a user's menu bar as a favorite, and you can get right to it. Some of this stuff I just assume everybody knows because it's been out there, but I do realize a lot of consultants just come in, do the upgrade, leave, and then you're like, well, what's changed? So it is important to make sure everybody knows what's new or why did I go through all of this. But let's go to the Business Insights Explorer. Now we have 28 views here. This list is getting longer and longer and longer. So one of the new views that are in here, for example, is the Bill of Materials view. So this shows me each of my bills. So if I go to one of my more complex bills like my desktop computer, then I click on it, and then in the lower half I see all the component lines. Any of these, of course, you can drill into a preview of it. You can chart this data, you can graph it. This is the same Business Insights Explorer that's been in the system since 4.1. A where used view, you might give this to a light user. This shows you by default the component and the component description. Maybe I want to summarize it by revision level. You can drag and aggregate on any of these levels that you might want. Okay. But you can also understand what component is used in what items. You can look at charts where it really applies, like a quantity per bill, where you are grouping by, bill numbers. So you can see this piece has a lot more parts than this part, as an example. Some of the other new views that are in here, bill of materials, item quantities by warehouse view. So this shows me, based on item code, how many you have in each warehouse. If I want to filter this, I can say just show me warehouse 1, and this is the quantities of items. Now this particular sample company doesn't have much data, so I don't see much here. And then if you click on it, it shows you the details of the product or the product line that it belongs to. It can chart and graph, it can export, you can filter, you can summarize, and you can save your settings so they're there. I think in future releases they'll richen it up so that it's more of a true business intelligence analytics tool than it is today. But the views are all there, and if you spend the time to really master it, you can do some pretty interesting stuff. It's basically like a data browser with preset views and so forth. Okay, let's talk about the customizer. This is a major area that has been improved from 4.3 to 4.4. As I said, it got some significant improvements Custom Office did when they moved to the business framework in terms of the ability to add unlimited user-definable fields to almost every table in the system. Unlike the old version, when you added user-definable fields, everybody know what that means? UDFs, user-definable fields? No? Show of hands, who doesn't know what user-definable fields are? Okay. What they are is you can add, let's say you have the customer screen and you want to know the month and day of the birth date of your customer, or whatever it is. You can add a field to the standard system that looks and feels like any other MAS field to capture that information. Now, that ability has been in the system now for a long time, and there's a lot of places where it's useful. You can add that information so that you can add a field to the header of a sales order to capture a sample order or not, and you could check a box that says sample. Whatever it is that's unique to your business that Sage didn't put in the standard system, you could add fields. And in the older versions, you could add fields in like five areas here, 7 areas there, 3 there. One of the areas you couldn't add fields to, for example, were lot numbers, which was beat because there's no place to put anything besides a lot number in the lot number screen, and we have a lot of clients that want to track other information about a lot of an item without, having to keep it in a separate spreadsheet. So with the business framework, the ability came to be able to add unlimited numbers of fields. And in the old version, if I added user-definable fields for customers, they were stored in a separate table. And what that meant is when you wanted to write a report that had your customer info and your user-definable info, you had to have that customer and that table joined. And you had to use this thing called the left outer join, which long and short means it often made your reports run painfully slowly that were written in Crystal. Now, when the business framework came out, the user-definable fields are stored in the same table as your customer, just like another field as if Sage created it. That makes writing reports much simpler for an end user, and they run much faster because you're not linking tables together. Okay? So those are among the many changes that went into the customizer when they moved to version 4.0 and higher. One of the other major changes were, if you remember, in the old versions like purchase order prior to 4.4, there was no way to modify the fields on the purchase order entry screen. You had that here. Instead of describing it, I can just simply show you because I have it here. This is 4.3, and if I go to purchase order, if you look at the lines in the older architecture, which is again really a scrape of DOS, here's your details, but you could add information up here, but you couldn't add or modify these columns. These were hard-coded by programming. But now, with the new version, if you go into purchase order, all of these columns can be dragged, dropped, hidden, dropped, removed, all that kind of stuff, including extra fields that you add show up like any other field and can be put on here. So the ability to customize the system by us or by your power end users becomes significantly greater. But what has really changed in this new version is 2 key things here. First of all, you can automatically total detailed number UDFs to a header. And what that means in English is if you added a field to a sales order called, rebate amount, okay, and you have this option to put, $10, $5, whatever, while you're entering the lines of a sales order, when that order is saved, the system can now automatically total those lines and put the total in the header or footer of the order, which was never possible before without a programmer. So you can total up and also average, sum, min, max, but most importantly, total up numbers in the details, and when the system saves it in the header file, it will automatically transfer the total of the rows into a header piece, which makes running reports much faster and lean because you're working on a single total versus having to run through all the lines. The other thing is you can have cumulative calculations on multiple records. So if you wanted to then, put in a batch of orders that had a rebate on either the header or the lines, the system, when you post, can total them all up and post them to a group of customer user-definable fields. So essentially, they're giving posting-like functionality to the hands of us consultants or to power end users that previously was only accessible to a developer who would modify the source code of MAS, which meant if you upgraded, you had to pay that programmer to redo all this. Everything we talk about here should survive future upgrades automatically, which makes it much less costly and much less potential technical problems when you upgrade your system. These are important plumbing changes to the system that, again, you don't always see as an end user that significantly keeps the cost and the reliability high and the cost down of maintaining the system. But the big one is this VB scripting, okay? VB stands for Visual Basic Scripting, and Sage has for years supported VB scripting in the product, and virtually nobody's ever used it. And what VB scripting could do is you could put a button on a sales order that says click me, and you click it, and it could do something like total all the lines, take 10%, and possibly, depending on the scenario, stuff that 10% into the discount field. But you have to click the button. You have to interact with the user to make the script work, and because of that, and because people could forget, it never really was used much. The stuff people want to happen, they want to have happen automatically. As soon as I'm done with my totals, the system should automatically add those up and put it in the discount. Or the system should check my margins, and if the margins are below a certain percentage, should put a warning window up and either not allow me to proceed or not, because that's not a specific logic that Sage built into the system, but the owner of your company wants that, or this or that. So now we can do almost extended solution-like customizations in your system without ever touching the source code. And again, that is probably the most radical change to the product in 15 years, because it allows us or power end users that want to learn a little bit of scripting language and play with it to be able to really make the system fit very specific business rules and requirements or needs, where you don't have to remember to do something offline on a spreadsheet or check something, and really makes the system more flexible by an order of magnitude. We're going to go into this in some detail. These customizations survive upgrades, and I can create these customizations for you. Our consultants export and email them to you, and you press a button, they bundle all in. They're all modular. It's not us going in here and performing surgery. And if we like what we've done for you, we can bundle it and send it to other customers, and they can put it in, or they can uninstall it, and it's like they were gone. It's a very nice, clean layer of customizations that makes for a much more supportable system and happier clients. So let's go ahead and talk about this new scripting and customizer capabilities that are in 4.4. Steve Malgrim, he's the chief development guy for the MAS90 200 product line, recently did a consultant webinar on a bunch of these samples, and I'm in the process of converting that into Flash, and I will be putting up a blog article on that where you can watch his actual presentation. So he really gets into some of the nuts and bolts of this for you or your techies, okay? But based on that presentation, I've loaded his samples so I can show you. These are just examples of what can be done with this new customizer. They're not absolutely complete for a purpose. Certain things are hard-coded, like the company code or this or that. They would need further development to be something that you would just plug in into client work. Some of them do work pretty well, but it just shows you the kinds of customizations that we can now do, or end users can do, that historically were pretty expensive and extensive modifications to the system. So let me start with a simple one. If I go into sales order, now for those of you who aren't aware, whenever a screen has been modified with the customizer, there's always an asterisk in front of the name. That tells you and the consultants that this isn't exactly factory standard. You can always delete or disable customizations so that the screen goes back to factory standard. Like this PO number thing is part of the suite of samples that were in this bundle to show you that that's not normally on that screen. Okay, so if we were to create a new order and we were to say that it's a quote. Now, normally in MAS90 and 200, if today was May 20th, the quote expiration date will be December 31st, the year 5999. We're going to have a Y56K problem someday with MAS90, but it'll be my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren's problem. But the point being is essentially there's no expiration date. What this script does is the minute, let me go back here, cancel. Right now, the ship date is 5/20. The assumption is it's today, which is another thing you could script and adjust because many people don't ship same day. All right, but the minute I change this from order to quote, watch what happens over here. Notice it went to 8/18, which is exactly 90 days from the order date, and that was done via the scripting because of. And it's an example, and I'll show you how that worked. But that's a simple example of the kind of things you can do. And there are very few systems that allow you to do something. There are a few, but not many that can do something like that without you modifying the source code, because this is an existing system field. It's not like we're updating some user definable or other generic field. This is overriding whatever. If there's a default value that fills in, we can now override the default values, which in the past system fields we couldn't touch. So it really exposes a lot of flexibility. So if we go into the custom office area, let me just show you what he did, or Steve did, to make that work. And I will admit, I personally am not a VB script expert. I can read it enough to sort of understand it, but we have developers that we can reach out to that are some of the best in the country. That if you need something done, they can code it for you, or if you have a developer in-house that knows VB script, which is pretty close to Visual Basic and .NET, but not exactly, then it's accessible there. So if I go into Custom Office now, and I go into Main, you see user-definable fields and tables, and user-definable script maintenance. This is a new feature. If we go into here, we have, these are the various scripts that are now in my sample system. Most of these came from this bundle that Sage put out there for consultants and other curious people. Now, one of them, here it is. So when you switch to quote, and I'll show you later, this script is associated with that drop-down of where you say standard order, master order, quote, back order, what have you. When you drop it down, if it's a quote, okay, and then here's his comments, zero out everything, then take today's date, add 90. If I change that to 60, 45, or whatever, that's all you have to do. Then reformat the date so that MAS90 likes it versus Windows, because they do store their dates differently. And then return that value into the field called ship expire date, which is the name of the field of ship the expiration date or ship date, which are shared. When you put in an order, it's called the ship date, but if you put in a quote, it's called the expiration date, but it's really the same field in MAS. That's why they call it ship expire date. And then when you're done, you're done. Let me see, wait, if there's anything below that. Exit. If it's a standard order, then see if it used to be a quote, in case you changed it, and then reset the date to today so it doesn't keep the ship date 90 days out after the customer decides to order the product. These are the kind of things you got to think about as a programmer, because if they just did the first half, the first customer calls, wait a minute, this customer didn't get their product. They ordered it. Why? Because it started as a quote, and now the ship date is sitting 90 days out. So this is a good programmer understanding business issues, making sure that the program handles it. I think even a non-technical person can kind of get a feeling for what's going on in here, even if you don't know exactly what some of the specific things mean. But you can see here that this is not complete Greek. It's just maybe Japanese. Yes?
So once past that expiration date, does it automatically close it?
That's a different issue. I think it just calls it, it's like a warning, but it doesn't actually.
So it'll still show up on open.
I believe so, but you could then create a filter that filters out expire, which I'm sure there's a script you could create to do more than what I just described. So point being is it was able to do that. That's a very simple function, okay? So let's take a look at some of the more advanced examples. Now here's one, and actually the way he did it's a shame because it's pretty close to an enhancement I had developed for one of my clients that is an extended solution that isn't being built into the system, but it's similar. We have clients say, whenever I buy from this vendor, I want 20% of the cost to go to this GL account, 30% of the cost to go to that. And of course, you know, you can only default one GL account per vendor. And there was an extended solution that was built for us that I had written for a client 15 years ago, and it's not going to make it into the freebies. And if you want that, you'll have to pay one of these developers. But what Steve built here is something similar, but not quite the same. Instead of doing the allocation by GL account, he does the allocation by department within the same GL account. Okay, so, but it's still conceptually the same. So, for example, if we go into accounts payable and we go to vendors, this new field here was added in, and we know it's been customized because it's here. And by the way, all these changes I'm showing you took me about 30 seconds to install in the system because they were built. I didn't have to go through and set all this stuff up. This one has a vendor allocation code of 100. Why is it 100? Because I just made up that number when I set it up. If I hit the magnifying glass, it shows me the allocation codes we have. One is based on head count. One's called the square foot allocation. Maybe, you know, I want to allocate the expense based on the square feet of each of these departments and what have you. but I just created one called 100. Now, to show you where that lives in something, a feature that very few have ever used because it didn't have much value until now, in a user-definable table. So MAS has had this ability to create additional tables, but it was very hard to use them for anything meaningful. Now with the scripting, they could really be useful. So one of the tables is this GL department segment. So now we have this table, that's where that pick list came from, that said Department 1 gets 10%. Department 1 is department code 10. It's just hard-coded to work with the first segment only. Again, this was just example code, not something designed to be a complete fleshed-out solution that works for any segment in your chart. But 25% of the AP goes to Department 10, 50% goes to Department 20, 15% goes to Department 30, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so once you do that and then you assign that to a vendor, if I go ahead and put in an accounts payable invoice, and I pick the vendor that has one of these allocation codes, which is the first one, and invoice number, make up a number, and let's use a nice easy number to calculate, $100. Now we go to the lines. Notice the default for them was account 555, and historically in the standard system, it would just put $100 in for account 555. Instead, it put 25% of 100 in Department 10, 50 in Department 20, 15 in 30, and 10 in 60, automatically. Did all of that because of a script. That was never even, you couldn't even think about doing that kind of stuff without a programmer in the past. So that's one example of the kind of stuff that you can start thinking about that we can do with scripting. All of that will survive upgrades and what have you. Another example is a way to lock down data. So as an example, if we go to, this is hard-coded to salesperson 0100, but it could have been made so that it was based on a restriction. So if we go to inventory inquiry, and I bring up our first item, okay, here's the inventory inquiry, which, well, actually there's two things going on. One, normally when you bring inventory inquiry up, it starts in this main screen. One of the scripts I have here, which automatically, as soon as this screen comes up, by default brings the quantity folder to the forefront. So it comes up here because some customers generally want to know that more than anything else. And that saves them the step of having to click on that tab and see it. So by opening that screen, it automatically goes to that function. That's one script that's here. It's probably 2 lines of code to do that. Okay, but more the function here is if we look at this item, if I go to history here, here's our history, here's our quantity. If I go to the next item, let me just find one of these that are associated with. The function I'm showing here is the fact that when you open up this screen, because of a script, rather than going into the main tab, it automatically opens up. Once you pick the item, it flips right over to quantity without you having to click it. Okay. Another example is if I go into customer maintenance, okay, now the default salesperson, if the default salesperson in the customer is 0100, and that is hard-coded into the script as an example, then you can see the history tab and you can see the summary tab. But if you go to a customer where the default salesperson is not 0100, notice when you click on history and summary, you're getting the Ghostbusters logo there. It will not open those tabs. So through scripting, you're able to lock down certain functionality by user, by anything you can think of. Maybe if the customer's done more than $1 million year to date, you can't look at that. Whatever you can think of, we can lock people out of being able to actually do certain functions via the scripting language, which opens up again a whole let me start thinking what we could do here, and it was usually an unthinkable scenario. So that is an example of a script there. Another one is, this one's pretty sophisticated. It's Upsell and Cross-Sell, which is something people have asked for ages, okay? So if we go back to those user-definable tables, this one's called an upsell. So if you buy something from product line ETVL, then the system will throw in the flat mount, the flat screen stand, a 2-year and a 5-year warranty, all with 0 quantities on the order so that you can try and upsell the customer and then just fill in the quantities of these related items. If you buy a flat screen, might you want a wall mount, an extended warranty, HDMI cables, whatever it is, okay? So if we go in, so we go into sales order, go into invoice data entry, create a new invoice, pick a customer, go to our lines. Now if I pick an item from that product line, such as the Samsung 55-inch backlit flat screen, okay? Notice as soon as I clicked off the line, it dropped in all of these items. Oh, actually, let me back up. I confused the two. I'm sorry. There are 2 scripts here, 2 different ones. One is an upsell and one is a cross-promotion, meaning what you're seeing here is a cross-promotion. If you buy any TV over 50 inches, you get a free Blu-ray player and HDMI cable. So it's automatically added those items as soon as you came off the row for the parent. Again, that is, you couldn't think of doing that in the system prior to this version without source code, ugly, expensive modifications. The other example, I think this is the one that's on sales order, so hold on. What the script should do is show a bunch of those extra items that would be upsell, like the mount, and instead of putting a quantity in, they would all come in, but they come in with zeros for the order entry person to drop in the quantities, and then the rest of the 0 rows wouldn't get saved when you save the record. Okay, but again, an example, one's a cross-sell, a promotional bundle, and one is a upsell that you're trying to sell your customers additional related products, which people always ask for in the system. It's one I wish was built in, but hey, now you can do it with scripting. And then here's an interesting script showing some of those more sophisticated capabilities, a customer referral script. You want to give a customer, I don't know, a $200 discount for referring another customer, but you want to keep track so that you don't, but what if they, you give them $50 on one order, then $50 on another, but once they exceed 200, you want to stop. So if we go back to those user-definable tables, here's the customer coupon table, which is maintained by the system that, well, I'll show you in a moment. And you have a minimum order amount of $200. Again, that's you can program that. So if I go into a customer screen, actually, let me do this. Let's create a new customer, CFBS test. Whoops, yeah, there you go. The only piece of information you have to have in here is a salesperson. Okay. Now, in here, there's an option to put in who recommended them, and I just have to find it. You saw it?
Yeah, refer right income. That's the payrolls one.
Ah, no, that's refresh shadow.
Right-hand side.
Ah, sorry, I should have made these in red because you can't even tell what's built in and what's added. So if I say referred by, let's say Avnet Processing referred this customer. So when we hit accept, it's a new customer. But by hitting accept, behind the scenes, what the script did, if we go back to this customer coupon table, is it says this customer Avnet now has a $50 coupon for any order amount that's over $200 based on, I think it's programmed to take 10% off up to $50 is the promotion. So now if I go in and create an order for Avnet, the referring customer, of course, they're over their credit limit, sample data. It's probably not unrealistic. Okay, and we sell them something. And we're going to need, to make it over $200, we're going to need 3 of these. We'll let it go negative. Okay. Now, as soon as I click on totals, the script will go ahead and calculate. I think the deal was a 5% discount. So they're going to get $13.05 off because of the referral. Okay. Nope, back up. Ignore it. That was their regular discount. What the system did is added this coupon code for $50, and in the body of the order, on that, you're going to see it's going to say, thank you for referring customer name. We are pleased to offer you a $50 discount off this qualifying order. Now, once we accept this, now if we go back so you can see what it's doing behind the scenes, go back to this coupon table, you'll see it's decremented it out, kept track of it, and now it's done. So that's using a combination of the scripting and the decrement and the totaling and so forth. And all this is done with scripts. All will automatically upgrade, all a power end user or our consultants can do. So that's what I wanted to show you in terms of available scripts and kinds of logic. Yes, question?
How do you keep track of all this stuff? I mean, you notice that the panel's been customized with the asterisk, but how do you know if it's been customized once, twice, 3 times?
You don't know how many times it's been customized, but when you bring a screen up, like if I go to sales order entry, okay, you can always hit, you can either do it through the customizer or hit Control F9, and this will show you, first of all the customizations that exist. Now, right now, this customization applies to all companies and all users. You can have that, but have a separate customization for just one company or one company and one group of users. And the more narrow that goes, if I'm that user, then that user customization overrides the all customization. So it's multi-layered like security, and it just shows the last time it was edited, etc. Now, and of course, you would restrict this ability to only authorize users because you can break things. But if you break them, you can delete the customization and it just goes back to factory standard, so you can't do any permanent damage. If I double click on this, this will now open up the panel, and then you can start looking at some of the items and so forth. But when you do bring in the bundler shows you all the things that it's putting in these fields. And this was a lot of modifications going in one. There's like 10 different things, so there's a lot going on. But again, the key thing is let me show you one other thing in the customizer down here. If we go to user definable field and table maintenance, and we look at, let me think, what do I want to show you? Sales order header is a good one. But this is showing you all the user definable fields that currently exist for the header table of an order, which is usually visually represented as header. And one of the things that's interesting to note is that the customizations live on the table, not on the screen, so whatever you just saw there would work identically if you imported data. If I got a website and Avnet had placed an order and I imported it through Visual Integrator, guess what? That coupon line would have appeared. That's the beauty of the business object interface, is whatever works on screen works no matter how the data is created. It goes through the same rules. And one of the remember the expiration date feature? That is associated with the following. There's the user-defined script. So one is called post validate on order type. And what that means is after, not before. Pre means before, post is after. After the order type is changed, run that script. And then they put a convenient link there that opens up the script that we saw before. And then there's a priority code. If you have more than one script running on the same event, the priority code that's lower will occur before, so you can order what's going on. If you only have one script, the default is 500. Does that make sense? So basically, whenever the field on the sales order header, the field of order type, and if I hit that drop down, these are all the fields on the sales order header, and these can be built-in fields or user-definable fields. But whenever order type after, not pre or anything else, but after that field is chosen, then execute this script, which goes to the ship and expiration date and adds the 90 days that we saw before. I do think they could have made it a more visual way where you can see how it's all tied together. It took me a while to figure out where the pieces are, but again, for a first cut at a solution that is generally designed for consultants or power end users, it's fully functional. Would it be nice if they had a tree view of all the relationships? Yeah, but I'd rather have it now than wait 3 years for them to build a prettier UI around it. So any other questions around the capabilities of scripting now? And I think you can start to see why this is it's hidden, but probably one of the most powerful advancements the product has really had in 10 years in terms of what we can do now. Purchase agent. This is an add-in, okay, from JobOps, the same company that makes JobOps. And if you own JobOps, this doesn't really apply to you. And the reason is, how many of you have JobOps? So 2 companies have JobOps. You're familiar in JobOps with a function called the Component Exception Manager. And what the Component Exception Manager is a tool in JobOps that assists your purchasing person with buying the necessary materials to either replenish your basic inventory or to purchase for manufactured orders or orders that need to be made. So if I need to make these 5 things and I have some items that are below their minimum quantity, the component exception manager assists the user in a nice grid format to be able to do that purchasing, because standard MAS does not provide a lot of tools for whoever is responsible for purchasing to automate the process of creating purchase orders. It has this one basic function that'll go out to the default vendor and mass create purchase orders that I don't think I've ever seen somebody use, because nobody just buys stuff like that. There's just too much interaction needed with the purchasing manager or whoever handles product for that feature to ever be of any use. Anybody here deal themselves with the purchasing side of the business? Okay, a good number of you. So what JobOps did is they kept people kept saying, boy, I wish you could just sell component exception manager. I don't need JobOps because we don't make stuff, but I really love the way it helps deal with back-to-back orders. There's a lot of companies that never stock anything. We don't stock software. When I get an order, I turn around and I call Sage and we order it. And it's always this, I got to go enter a sales order, I got to go over and enter a purchase order. There's no real link. The very basic linking function they have, again, is very limited, and it only works on the default vendor. There have been an extended solution over the years that costs almost as much as this, that does some linking from sales orders, but it's still a very crude tool. So what they've done is they basically cut the component exception manager out of JobOps and are selling it as a standalone enhancement for other MAS90 users. Okay, so it's normally a $2,500 add-on, but they're allowing us to run this promotion for attendees of the user group. For the next 60 days, it's $1,500. So let me show you what it does. But essentially, it takes demand from open orders based on required by dates. It takes demand from our on-hand quantities and our reorder point and stocking levels, which are all manual in MAS90, and Valogix will show us the next step of being able to do that kind of stuff. It takes open POs and expected receipt dates, dealing with multiple vendors with multiple pricing. And if you use MRP, it takes any projections from where you put in your customers' forecasts in MRP into account as well. Now, here is one little thing. It isn't quite ready for 4.4 yet. So what I'm going to do is show it to you in 4.3. You can buy it today for, even if you're going to upgrade to 4.4, buy the license today, and then as soon as it's available, install it for 4.4. They're expecting that in late June. So I'm just going to switch over to another instance of MAS here, and I'm going to go into purchase order. So all should look the same, except you have this one new item here called Purchase Agent. And if we go into Purchase Agent, basically you pick, where do I want to study my requirements through? Maybe I want to buy through 6/10/2010. I want to look at my demands and so forth relative to that time fence, as they call it. Do I want to take the lead time into account that's set up in the vendor master file? It's not their actual performance, it's whatever lead time you key in. Again, MAS has some pretty static numbers. I can do this for a range of customers, orders, vendors, product lines, all these criteria. Or I can just say let it rip. So we'll go ahead and say let it rip, and it goes through all those things I showed you on the other slide to go ahead and create this suggested buying plan. And if we continue, we'll now go into edit selections, and I'll maximize this. So now we can look at this by product line, by sales order, by warehouse, by buyer, if you have multiple buyers dealing with it. So let's look at it by customer, for example. These are all the customers that have some kind of demand for product in the system. If I double-click on ABF, among all of their orders, they have these 3 items that they need, and the system is recommending, based on the demand, based on your min, max, your buying levels, all that stuff that you set up in inventory, what you should do. Some of them are confusing because you buy in pieces, but you stock in cases, so you see some big numbers here. But basically, if we scroll over, it shows you all the reasons why it's recommending you buy this number. Okay? You can also click on the row and drill down and get right to the inventory inquiry, theoretically. Yeah, well, actually, you just got to highlight the item number. So it opens up the inventory inquiry for that item relative to that row. If you click this, it shows you a time-phased availability of this item. Now, I don't have good data here, but this would show you how many you have on hand, upcoming sales order demands, upcoming purchase order expected receipts, and showing you by date, which is essentially capable to promise when am I able to have this item, and it shows you time phase And up here it shows you your maximum stock, your cutoff point, your reorder point, and that your minimum order quantity is 2,000. And based on the replenishment method you have set up, whether it's maximum, reorder, or whatever, it then makes the recommendation. Now, suppose, you know what, I really don't want to go ahead and do this, so I want to hold everything. The only one I really want to address is this one item. It's a little bit reversed. If the check mark is not on, it will address this item. The check mark is on, it will ignore this item, okay? So who's the vendor? Now, let me use the first one because it's a little easier. United is who we usually buy this item from because it's set up in inventory, and that's how the regular MAS90 auto purchase order would work. And here's our normal price. But United is out of this, or let's say, let me just do the find again. Container Corp is running a promotion on this. So I can change the vendor to Container Corp, and they're charging 0.85 cents for this. But I have to buy at least 5,000 to get free freight. And maybe, okay, so now we'll look at what Breslin has to deal with. And Breslin, again, I'll hold everything except for this. And this, I want to buy 2 of these. And there is no default vendor properly set up, so we'll buy those from IBM. And we can also look at this by product line. So for our workstation and furniture, this is all of the items that we need to buy. And the reason I know we need to buy them is this is checked. By default, it only shows you the items you need to deal with. If I want to show items I don't theoretically have to do anything for, you click No Requirements. If I want to show items, every item I have, regardless of whether I need to buy something, I can say Show All. But the default is only filter this grid by the items that, based on my mins, maxes, and demands, I should be buying. Okay? But based on that, I don't want to, I want to hold everything. But I do want to go out and buy some of these globes, and instead of 22, I want to buy 30. So once your buyer goes through all of this, they can then optionally print out a preview sheet. And since I'm not connected to a printer, I'll just do this. And it shows me the quantities based on my current settings of what it's going to go out and buy or do or hold, and how many dollars I'm committing the company to. So if I didn't know what I was doing, I wasn't paying attention, it prevents me from creating a whole pile of purchase orders that I'd have to delete. And, whoops, didn't mean to close. Oh, yeah. So now I do want to go ahead and buy all that stuff. And I say Create POs. And now if we go into Purchase Order, it created a PO to Container Corporation to buy 22 of those tables. And it created a PO for one of the, that's a different one. It was really only one involved based on my settings. But this will create as many purchase orders with as many items automatically from you based, again, on open orders, on min levels, on the reorder points and all that stuff that you set up in inventory, based on taking into account inbound purchase orders. So if the customer, let's say you have 0 on hand of an item, and a customer wants 10 2 weeks from now, but you have a purchase order expected to receive 1 week from now for 50, it's going to recommend you do nothing, as long as it's within this cutoff period. But if those numbers are reversed, it would recommend creating a PO, set the required by dates. So does everybody see kind of what this thing does? It's not meant to be revolutionary, but it serves a very significant purpose in the procurement side of the business. Now, again, to remind you, it's very simple. It just looks at what you need and buys it. It doesn't look at optimizing your inventory in terms of replenishment or stocking. That's what Tom's going to get into next with the Valogix solution, which is if you have a larger inventory and you want to save money on carrying costs, it takes this to the nth degree next level. But for small guys that just do, either back-to-back where you inventory very little and you just buy and sell, or you keep a simple inventory, this is still light years ahead of the standard lack of tools and mass for assisting your purchasing person. For $1,500, it's almost a no-brainer, in terms of what it can do. It's totally isolated from the system, as you can see. It's really just one menu. It doesn't get itself. It reads a lot, but it doesn't poke itself into any other areas of the system. So it's an extremely non-invasive add-on. It's really, I don't think it affects one line of existing mass code. Those purchase orders are all written. As I said, this is coming for 4.4, and then it'll use a business object interface to create the POs versus whatever method they use in Job Ops today. And when Job Ops goes to 4.4 in late June as well, it will take on those properties. Any questions about Purchase Agent? Yes.
What are the high-level differences between MRP and organization?
Two different things. MRP, well, I mean, not totally different. MRP is some people have used MRP as a assisted purchasing tool, and MRP will look at customer forecasts and open orders and recommend and or sometimes create POs, but they're very rigid. They are, first of all, it's very hard to understand and read the reports, but it's always to the vendor. That's the default vendor. You have no ability to change the pricing, no ability to change the vendor, to all those fields that you would normally change while creating a PO can be interactively edited. So essentially, you can still use MRP. If you own MRP, this will take your MRP forecast, but I think it's better than MRP. The only thing this doesn't do, if you're a manufacturer, this doesn't blow through the component level demand. So if you got an item that's made up of 50 pieces, this is looking at the demand for the finished good, not blowing through the pieces that MRP does. Okay, now they are coming out with an enhancement to this, in the next release that will blow through bills of materials. So as most people that manufacture on mass are actually just using bill of materials, that updated release will look at the components needed to make the finished good and make its recommendations based on the components. Job ops users don't have to worry about any of this because it automatically is blowing through the work tickets and so forth. But right now, it's pretty much a distribution, not a manufacturer's tool.
It sounds like job ops is more on the fit than what I'm asking about here. Mm-hmm. Does it take into account multi-level bills? In other words,
job ops
days of the step before it actually makes something needed.
Right. With job ops, you can create work tickets that are built for other work tickets. And then when you use the component exception manager, what you don't see here, this shows you what you have to buy. If you use job ops, there's a separate one of what you have to make. And this is where it actually makes the work tickets for the sub-assemblies of a parent assembly item, which we can get into, on a separate time when we dig into job ops. But again, this tool should look very familiar to job ops users. But for those that don't have job ops and are pretty much distributors, this is a lifesaver for the money. It's really nice. I'm glad they finally came out with it. Okay, so next up, this relates more to just systems. All of you, one would hope, have some kind of backup technology on your systems for backing up your mass data as well as any other data that you have on your servers. Anybody here not comfortable with your current backup solution for your network and your servers? Okay, so we have one person not quite sure how well their backups are working. I can tell you, the horror stories in my 20-something years in this business, you get the situation where the backup was working great until somebody did an upgrade to a program like MAS and moved the directory, but the backup software didn't know the directory was moved, and they went, for 5 years backed up what they thought was their data, and then when it all blew up and they went to restore it, they had no backups, those fun nightmares. One of the things that has improved backup technology in the last couple of years is, in many cases, companies are migrating to hard disk-based backups versus tape backups, because the problem is hard disk capacities have grown faster than most tape capacities. So many, I think, the auto changers and so forth got so clumsy that now the cost of external hard drives has become so affordable that in many cases having a backup based on hard drives that can easily be restored instantly, so the tape doesn't have to be positioned to where the file is and be done so by a non-technical guru, has been a big improvement. However, we still have that classic issue that, I still bet 80% of my clients make their backup to the hard drive, put the hard drive, maybe if you're lucky, in a fire safe, do the next one, do that choice, and once in a while, did we take it off site? Yeah, that was last month. Let me go bring, and a lot of people are not reliably taking their data off site, so that if the building burned down, I wouldn't trust the fire safe 100% on that. You could be in some serious trouble. And even if you do have a reliable backup system with reliable off-site physical storage, you still find that most backup systems require either your internal IT people or external IT consultant to help you restore data. The other problem we find is numerous clients have a gazillion megabytes of data on everybody's laptops that are not properly copied to the server, and most people rarely back up their laptops even though they're supposed to. We ourselves use and recommend a solution called Backup for Workgroups, which is a great traditional backup product for backing up to hard drives on your server, and also you can put an agent on the laptop so that when people dock in, it will back that up, and that's something we can talk to you about. But you still get issues. A new laptop was bought. People aren't doing what they're supposed to do or what have you. what we've come across recently, thanks to the great increases in bandwidth and internet capability, is a solution that we can now offer to our clients to be able to back your data up over the internet. Now, I wouldn't consider this your absolute only backup option. I still think you should have a traditional full-blown backup on your server. If you have the scenario in which your server melts down, and with the right backup software, you can buy a new server or get it fixed and restore it from what we call bare metal, meaning completely blank machine can then get restored back with the operating system, the programs, and the databases, and so forth. That's the purpose of those backups. But what this solution does is it backs up your critical files, all those spreadsheets, data, the MAS90 directories, not here to recover your entire machine's operating system with, antivirus software. That's the job of local software or reinstall. But it takes all of your critical files and backs them up over the internet to basically a, nuclear-proof facility somewhere that is fully secured and encrypted with your data, so that if you had a crash on your server, or more likely somebody did something stupid and just deleted a file they shouldn't, you can rapidly pull a copy of that back from your office or even from another location should you have to get out of your location because of a fire or something else. The solution that we're talking about is powered by a company called Gilware, who's very well known for data recovery. That's when you have that 500 man-hour project that got deleted that wasn't backed up, and the drive is there, but it's broken, and you're like, somebody's going to kill me. So for $600, you send it to a company like this. They open it up in a clean room that looks like a surgery center. They take the platters out of the drive, and you pray nobody knows that you did this, and they restore it. And they have about a 90% success rate with every kind of drive they get, ones that have been melted and this and that. Often, as bad as the drive looks, with their engineers, they can take your drive and restore it. But they said, this company has now moved into the area of getting the backup done ahead of time. So it's simple to restore, and it works as an adjunct, and it can be used just as importantly. It's priced and designed to work just as easy for your servers and your workstations for people who aren't reliably or who are very mobile and not keeping all their files stored on a central server. And as I said, I think the solution, based on the ones I've seen, are affordable. I've seen some really cheap solutions on the internet, but the majority of them, you Google and you find half the time you want your data back, it's sitting in some offsite center in India, and they have issues and they can't get the data back. The cheap $50 a year ones, I forget one of them, but there's numerous lawsuits where people went to get their data and they couldn't. You get what you pay for, $50 a year, or what have you. But this is a commercial business grade solution we can administer. They have humans that are looking at your backups, not the data. They can't. That's encrypted. You hold your own key. But looking at has data been backed up, and if for some reason it stops after a couple days, they'll call you on the phone and tell you perhaps the service crashed machine, the network went down, whatever. So it's actively being monitored to make sure that it is working and working reliably by people. Now, why remote backup? Because it's automated, it's reliable, it's secure, it's redundant, it's flexible, and it takes minutes essentially, or very, very short amount of time to set up and implement. Some of the typical statistics as to what is the main reasons for data loss. 40% is hardware failure, 29% human error. Oops, I deleted that. That shouldn't happen. Or you overwrote a file and you thought it was named something, all that kind of stuff. Computer viruses, theft, and hardware destruction, which is that, fire kind of situation. But what most people don't realize is 77% of all businesses that suffer a total data loss are bankrupt within 4 months. You have no idea how much your business depends on the data in those servers, and if you don't have a backup plan for worst case scenarios, many a company went bankrupt that were based in the World Trade Center after 9/11. So that's what spurred this whole concept of redundant physical locations that are states away from where you are. Some of the unique features of this solution, because I looked at a lot of these and why we've chosen to go with this. Number one, unrestricted backup and restore speeds. Okay, I've seen those cheap solutions, the $50 a year ones, and you got 40 gigs of data, and they restrict it to 200K upload. Maybe by the time Santa's coming next year, all of your data will get backed up. It's because bandwidth costs money, their price is cheap, the speed is slow. So unlimited isn't really unlimited. If your data is changing faster, then their system will allow you to upload it. This has the option, if you so choose, to eat every ounce of your upload bandwidth for backup. Now, would you want to do that? No. You need to conduct business, and it has throttles. But there's absolutely no limit. They can handle up to 100 megabits upload directly into their servers. And they do it through multiple channels of files simultaneously. So it copies 20 files at a time at the bandwidth levels that you set, or wide open, which usually is done when you do a manual, I need to back this up now, and or done the first time you set it up so that it's as quick as possible. Now, let's say you have huge amounts of photos and images that are absolutely necessary for backup, and it's 200 gigs of data. I don't care how much bandwidth you have, that's not practical. Okay? And if you're on a cable, you'll get a call from Cablevision. We've canceled your account because we think your bit torrenting the latest movie is uploaded because of the amount of bandwidth. So what they will do is send you a hard drive, FedEx, with their software. You press a button, it backs everything up to this hard drive. It's all prepaid. You FedEx it to them, and they upload it locally into their data centers. And your first main backup is done that way if you have a massive amount of data. And then each future set of backups is only differential. And what that means is if you've got a SQL database file that's 100 megs, but each day only 50K really changes uniquely inside that file, the system has technology that only changes the delta information between the two files. So it's uploading 200K, not another 50 meg file each day over and over, and still maintains the integrity of that. And before it sends it up, it fully compresses it first after doing the delta. Okay, so that's makes backing up over the internet very practical, even if you're backing up very large files. Okay, it also has an option to not only back up over the internet, but also to keep a copy local, independent of your own backup. So you may have a hard drive, so that when you need to do a quick restore, it looks for the local copy first. If it's not there, then it grabs it off of their servers remotely. And again, you can control. You don't have to think about it. Once you set up, you say, use 40% of the capacity of that drive, and then it just always keeps as much as it can there. In addition, it has multiple revisions. The default is 5. But the classic is, I want 5 revisions, and I saved that spreadsheet, and I overwrote it. The file is not damaged, it's just overwritten. You could go back 2 versions, like, before I saved it 2 times ago is where it really was correct, before somebody pasted in a sheet that blew it up. You can see each time that file was saved the last 5 times and choose which one or more of those to restore. The default is 5. You can set in any number you want. The more revisions you have, the more data it takes up, and the service is priced based on how much total data that they're backing up. But keep in mind, if I have a spreadsheet that's 100K in space, and I keep 5 revisions, it's not 500K of storage. It's just the delta between the revisions. So the revisions don't take up much space unless the actual underlying document is massively changing in each version. As I said, it can restore from that external hard drive first if you need to restore it, if your whole place melted down and blew up, then of course your data is safe in the data centers. As I said, it's professionally monitored. They have a background sheet on, it's SaaS and this and that compliant. All public companies need to have the data, the security. They can have it where they can help you restore your data, or they can have it where no matter how much you want them to, they can't get at your data without your key, and only your people can have the key. And if nobody has the key, you are out of luck, because that's how secure it is. So most people opt for them to keep a separate key, through a contract, but if your company absolutely positively doesn't want them to have any access, then you hold the key, but you're responsible not to lose the electronic key that decrypts your data. You get backup performance and automatic email reports of the status of your backups and so forth, and free data recovery guarantee. If some bizarre reason you still couldn't get your data like one of those other services, and no charge will take any of those hard drives and use their clean room service and get the data off, which they have an 80-90% success rate at doing. Not that they've ever had to do that, but it's a nice extra insurance plan there that most can't do, because most people don't have a clean room repair side of the business. So I said, here's some of the security background for those of you that are public or have to adhere to that. It's encrypted, it's redundant, RAID 1 and 0 replicated to RAID 5. The center that they're using is the Lattice data center, SAS 70 Type 2 compliant, whatever. Basically, it means the U.S. Secret Service can use their data center to back this up. So just understanding how the security works. First of all, a unique encryption key is generated when we first install the software on a machine. This all happens behind the scenes. Then the system is backed up. Data is compressed and encrypted prior to transfer over the internet. Then the data is transferred via the internet via secure socket layer, which is another level of encryption, to the data center. The data remains in the data center completely encrypted and unviewable by anybody. Then if you need to restore some file, the data is transferred back to you securely over the internet, still encrypted. It's never unencrypted. Then when it goes to restore, it uses that key that was generated to decrypt and uncompress the data. So at no point is your data not securely encrypted by 128-bit encryption and out for the world to get hacked into. So, any questions on the big picture on that and what it's about? Okay, so I have this solution installed on my machine here, and I'm just going to open up a directory. I'm running Windows 7 here, if this should look familiar to everybody if you've got some. And I'll go into one of my directories here, my documents, products. Okay, I'm going to take a directory like Saleslogics here. Now that's already backed up, so I want to clone it so you can see the whole thing. If we look at this directory, it's about 20 megabytes. It's not huge, it's not small. It's a good size for demonstrating in the class here. And I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste another copy of that directory. Now, by doing nothing, at whatever the scheduling I have set up for, the system will find that this is new and back it up. And you can set up, that these documents are critical, these are important, these are low priority, and based on priorities, how often and how fast they're backed up. How fast means how much bandwidth it's allowed to use up of your internet connection. How often does it scan for changes. But I'm going to use did it just go ahead and do it already while I was talking? No, it didn't. It just flagged it. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click on this, and I'm going to say manually back up now. This is the way I can just force it to back this up without waiting for the schedule. And now it adds them into the backup queue. You see this little icon here. So what it's doing, it takes a few seconds. Right now is when it's encrypting and looking for deltas where applicable. And now it's starting to upload the files, 100%, 100%. These are the size of the files. Normally you don't have to look at any of this. I'm just showing you the background. You can see it's backing it all up to 20 megs. Okay, so forget this stuff. This was from before. We have one error, and the error we have is thumbsdb. That's a file that Windows 7 creates that gives you those visual little thumbnails. That file is always open, and the system is not like a cold iron backup. It cannot back up files that are open at the time of the scan. So what our approach is with MAS, which is generally a problem with MAS in general because it's not a SQL database where you can back up SQL Server while people are in the system. You can't back up MAS. Is we just create a little batch file on a schedule that each night copies your MAS data to a second directory that this is backing up so that when it goes to back it up, the files aren't in use so you don't have those issues. But the point being is other than that, it's backed everything up. And now, suppose I needed something from that, so I'll go ahead, let me just go ahead and delete this because this was just a copy anyway. Oops, I have it open. Something has, but it doesn't matter. So if I go to my computer, you'll see this new other backup, or excuse me, this other device here. It's called, it looks just like another hard drive. If I double click on it, you could have multiple machines, okay, but we just have the one. Okay, there it is. So software preload. Now these are all the directories that it has backed up. Typically your user data in Windows 7 is stored in the users folder. Then these are all those different unique users that log into a workstation. I'm logged in as me. Then within me, in my documents folder, and then within my documents folder, I have my, I can change the view here, my products folder, and then here's that Saleslogics copy here. If I go into here, here's all the documents, and then I can right-click, and I can just retrieve to original or just restore to, and I'll just restore this document to my desktop. You get the idea. So basically it would, and it does, it did every time until something different about here than when I did it at home. It restores that file, file's fully intact, you can do what you want with it, and so forth. So restore to desktop, okay. And what it does is it puts it in the restore queue, And here it is. You saw it pop right up. Now I can open it up, and my document is saved. Okay? So essentially, let me just go back to the PowerPoint. Here's the important question. What's this kind of thing cost? First of all, they have a 30-day free trial we can set you up with where it will let you back up to 10 gigs for 30 days, no charge. Second of all, we were able to negotiate. I got to update this. This is actually 3 gigabytes. They have a plan in which, for free, you can use this system to back up your MAS90 data if after compression it takes up less than 3 gigabytes of data, which we've done some analysis in many of our clients' active data, I don't mean copies and play companies and whatever, are typically in the 1 to 2.5 gig range. That's before compression. Typically compression is at least 50%. And that may even leave you enough room to store multiple revisions of MAS versions, because again, the revisions are only the net. That is a free service they set up for us and our clients. Now, their hope is you love it so much that you want to back up something besides MAS90 on your system. And that's where they have their standard and their advanced plan. The standard plan is $25 a month for up to 10 gigs of data storage. For each additional machine, it's also $10 a month, but sort of like a family plan on cell phones, the storage is aggregated across the machines in terms of the cost. It's then an additional $15 a month for each additional 25 gigs of storage. Okay, again, if you've got a 50 gig hard drive, you don't necessarily need 50 gigs of storage. You might need 30 because of compression and versions. You don't need that much, but that's just to give you an idea. They have another plan that if you're going to need more is generally cheaper, the advanced plan, which is $50 a month for 50 gigabytes. They basically give you 5 times as much data for only double the price. And again, $10 for each additional machine, $15 for each additional 25 gigs. Okay, so let's say you have a server and 10 laptops, your scenario, and you wanted 50 gigs across all of them, you would have $50 a month of this plus $100 a month for the 10 laptops. So your total cost to back up 10 laptops and your server for a combined amount of data is about $150 a month, which is not bad for a business to have all of your data securely off-site and retrievable by each user independently without IT departments. Now, a laptop user can't go retrieving the server data. That's a security kind of issue, but you have the ability to retrieve your own data. And the IT person can manage everybody's machines, add and remove machines, and do all that kind of stuff from a web-based interface. In addition to that pricing, if you are a client of ours, and either a MAS client or on our network support contract, because we do hardware and networks, we're offering a 10% discount permanent to all of these items. And because you're at the user group, we're throwing another 10% in for 1 year of service if you sign up within 60 days of today. So you could, depending on if you're already a client and this, for the first year get 20% off and then 10% off those numbers as well. As I said, data is shared across all devices. So if all 10 of your devices combined only need 50 gigs, then a 50 gig plan is fine, sort of like the minutes plans on family cell phones. Okay, any questions? Any questions on that or about anything we covered today?